Hey everyone, ready to dive deep into the world of the witches? Released on October 22nd, 2020. This film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. In the golden glow of late October, just when the air is crisp with the hint of approaching Halloween magic, The Witches leapt onto screens worldwide, released on the 22nd of October 2020. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, the visionary behind timeless classics like Back to the Future and Forrest Gump, this retelling of Roald Dahl's beloved and notoriously dark children's novel arrived with dazzling visual effects, a powerhouse cast, and a thrilling energy that instantly caught the world's imagination. It wasn't merely another adaptation. It was a bold reimagining that dared to blend nostalgia, horror, and heart in a way that felt both eerily timeless and strikingly modern. What makes The Witches extraordinary is the fearless way it plunges into the whimsical darkness of Dahl's story while creating a cinematic experience that pulses with color, movement, and deeply human emotion. Unlike many adaptations that sand down the rough edges of their source material, this film embraces the quirky, sometimes unsettling spirit of the book. It's a story that doesn't shy away from the idea that the world can be dangerous for children, and that real courage often comes in the tiniest, most unexpected packages. The film's bold visual style, courtesy of Zemeckis' distinctive storytelling touch, blends retro glamour with unsettling surrealism, turning every grand hotel hallway, every witch's cackle, and every secret potion into something larger than life. With an electrifying performance from Hathaway as the Grand High Witch, a radiant and grounded Octavia Spencer as the grandmother, and a charismatic Jahzir Bruno as the young hero, the film casts a spell that's hard to shake. Set against the vivid backdrop of 1960s Alabama rather than the European settings of previous adaptations, the film introduces us to a young boy who, after the tragic loss of his parents in a car accident, finds solace in the arms of his wise and loving grandmother. She's a woman with stories, not just bedtime tales, but warnings, legends, and memories of real witches who live among humans, hiding behind polished appearances and impeccable manners. These witches, she explains, are not the broomstick-riding, cauldron-stirring figures of fairy tales. They are cold, cunning predators who despise children and go to terrifying lengths to erase them from the world. Her storytelling is more than entertainment. It's a survival guide. Their bond is tender and deeply moving, providing the emotional heartbeat of the story. Seeking to protect her grandson after a chilling encounter with a strange, too charming woman offering candy in a local store, the grandmother decides they must hide out in a lavish seaside hotel. But fate, always a mischievous player, intervenes. At that very same hotel, under the guise of a women's society meeting, the Grand High Witch has convened a secret gathering of witches from all across the world. It's here, behind locked doors and heavy curtains, that she reveals her newest, most dastardly plan. A magic potion that, when consumed by a child, will transform them into mice. Creatures despised and easily disposed of. The young boy, hidden in the shadows, becomes an unwilling witness to this wicked plot, but is soon discovered and, horrifyingly, turned into a mouse himself. It's a moment of stunning visual transformation, blending body horror and childlike wonder in equal measure. Yet even in his tiny, fur-covered form, the boy's spirit remains unbroken. Teaming up with another transformed child, the gluttonous yet good-hearted Bruno Jenkins, and with the help of his fierce and loving grandmother, he devises a plan to fight back against the witches and save other children from sharing his fate. And Hathaway's performance as the Grand High Witch is nothing short of mesmerizing. She struts across the screen with a deliciously malevolent flair, blending theatrical excess with genuine menace. Her heavily accented English, exaggerated facial expressions, and sinister elegance make her portrayal unforgettable. Hathaway manages to evoke both terror and laughter, creating a villain who is at once cartoonish and deeply threatening, a perfect fit for Dahl's original creation. Her Grand High Witch is not just a monster hidden beneath human skin. She's a symbol of superficial beauty masking deep cruelty, a theme that resonates far beyond the story's fairy tale trappings. Visually, the movie is a treat. The design of the witches, with their elongated mouths, sharp claws, and barely hidden deformities, treads a careful line between grotesque and fantastical. The CGI transformations are fluid and shocking, but they also carry a hint of whimsy that keeps the tone accessible for younger audiences. The hotel itself, with its sweeping staircases, gleaming chandeliers, and vast banquet halls, becomes a character in its own right. A glittering, treacherous playground where the battle between good and evil unfolds. The film's musical score, composed by Alan Silvestri, weaves through the narrative with eerie precision. Sometimes playful, sometimes ominous, it elevates every chase scene, every whispered warning, and every moment of triumph or terror. The music envelopes the audience, making the world of the witches feel alive, unpredictable, and thrillingly dangerous. The 2020 adaptation of The Witches didn't just retell a classic story. It sparked a cultural phenomenon. Part of the buzz came from the way it revisited the darker aspects of childhood storytelling at a time when audiences were craving something that acknowledged fear and uncertainty without surrendering to despair. In a world that often sanitizes children's media, The Witches dared to be scary, weird, and a little bit sad, just like life itself can sometimes be. It spoke to audiences who grew up with the original book, who remembered the nightmares and the lessons hidden within its pages, and who wanted to see those themes honored rather than erased. However, the film also generated real-world controversy. Critics and advocacy groups pointed out that the depiction of the witches' physical differences, particularly the way their hands were designed, unintentionally echoed real-world limb differences, sparking important conversations about representation and sensitivity in fantasy storytelling. And Hathaway and the filmmakers quickly apologized, expressing regret for any harm caused. This response, and the discussions that followed, became part of the film's larger impact on culture, highlighting the evolving relationship between stories, creators, and their audiences in the modern era. Despite the controversy, or perhaps partly because of the conversations it provoked, The Witches achieved something rare. It became a film that people didn't just watch, but debated, dissected, and reinterpreted. It became a touchstone for conversations about adaptation, nostalgia, childhood fears, and the ways stories evolve to meet the needs of their times. For some, it was a thrilling reintroduction to a classic nightmare. For others, it was a bold, beautiful, and imperfect attempt to honor a complex legacy. Viewers who dive into The Witches are rewarded not just with a thrilling story, but with a layered experience. Beneath the surface-level scares and stunning visuals lies a powerful exploration of resilience, love, and the refusal to be defined by one's circumstances. The boy, even after being transformed into a mouse, a creature small, vulnerable, and often overlooked, refuses to give up his agency or his hope. His grandmother, even when faced with seemingly impossible odds, meets fear with ferocity and unconditional love. Their relationship is a reminder that strength comes not from appearances, but from character, courage, and connection. The final scenes of the movie are bittersweet, retaining the novel's original ending where the boy remains a mouse for the rest of his life. It's a choice that feels brave in a cinematic landscape often obsessed with happy endings. Instead of a miraculous return to normalcy, The Witches offers a different kind of resolution, one that celebrates adaptation, acceptance, and the enduring power of family. In doing so, it leaves audiences with a lingering sense of melancholy and hope entwined, just as Dahl intended. All these elements, the masterful performances, the lush visual design, the fidelity to the darker tones of the source material, the real-world conversations it sparked, combined to make The Witches, 2020, a movie worth exploring deeply. It's not just another fantasy story. It's a mirror held up to the messy, beautiful, terrifying world of childhood and beyond. It's a celebration of survival against the odds, a love letter to those who refuse to be erased, and a vivid reminder that sometimes the smallest heroes make the biggest difference. In a cinematic world filled with polished, predictable adaptations, The Witches stands out because it embraces the weirdness, the sadness, and the bravery at the heart of its story. It invites viewers to step into a world where danger lurks in silk gloves and polite smiles, where survival means trusting your instincts, and where magic, dark, strange, and wonderful, waits just beneath the surface of the everyday. It's a world that's at once frightening and exhilarating, a world worth revisiting again and again. For anyone ready to dive into a story that challenges, enchants, and lingers long after the final credits roll, The Witches offers a journey unlike any other. In a time not so long ago, tucked within the soft, warm haze of 1960s Alabama, a young boy's world is quietly unfolding, filled with the simple joys of childhood, until the sudden cruelty of fate snatches it all away. He is a sweet, thoughtful boy, quiet but observant, living a happy, modest life with his loving parents, who dote on him with all the warmth and care a child could ever hope for. Yet tragedy strikes with brutal speed, as it so often does when least expected. In a single, heartbreaking moment, a car accident leaves him orphaned, his small, familiar world collapsing into silence and grief. It is then that his grandmother, a vibrant, strong-willed woman played by the luminous Octavia Spencer, steps in, gathering him into her arms and carrying him away from the wreckage of his former life. She's no ordinary grandmother. She has a fierce spirit burning behind her kind eyes, a fire forged by years of experience, wisdom, and secrets whispered down through generations. Her home is filled with cozy textures, the smell of home-cooked meals, and stories. Not just any stories, but tales with sharp edges and dark shadows, stories meant to prepare and protect. As she gently nurses her grandson back from his sorrow, she begins to weave in whispers of an unseen world that lurks just beyond the edges of polite society. She speaks of witches, not the broomstick-riding, fairy tale witches of colorful books and Halloween decorations, but something far more insidious. These witches walk among humans, she warns, hiding behind glamorous appearances, masking their hatred of children with sweet smiles and carefully manicured hands. Witches, she explains, despise children with a venom so deep that their only joy comes from devising cunning ways to rid the world of them. The boy listens, caught between skepticism and wonder, as she describes their telltale signs. Gloves worn to hide claw-like hands, wigs covering bald scalps, and square-toed shoes for feet with no toes. Her voice carries a weight of truth, a certainty that cuts through any childish doubts he might still cling to. It's more than a bedtime story. It's a warning, a primer for survival. As the boy slowly finds his footing again, a strange encounter shakes him to his core. In a dusty little grocery store, he crosses paths with an unsettling woman whose too bright smile and syrupy sweet voice seem to drip with menace. She offers him a piece of candy, her voice lilting and hypnotic, but the boy's instincts, sharpened by his grandmother's stories, scream at him to run. When he later recounts the encounter, his grandmother's face turns grave. Her worst fears are confirmed. The witches have found them. Knowing the danger is closer than ever, the grandmother acts swiftly. She books a stay at the luxurious Grand Orleans Imperial Island Hotel, a sprawling, opulent resort perched beside the glittering coastline. It is, she believes, the perfect place to hide, a fortress of busy hallways, endless crowds, and locked hotel doors. But once again, fate has other ideas. Even as they check in, an undercurrent of unease hums in the air. The hotel is a palace of excess, with gleaming marble floors, towering floral arrangements, and staff bustling to serve its wealthiest guests. But behind the glittering facade, something is amiss. As the boy and his grandmother settle into their room, they notice a strange group of women arriving at the hotel under the guise of a ladies' charity event. These women are impeccably dressed, their smiles brittle, their movements just slightly wrong, as if they are human only in the loosest sense of the word. Unbeknownst to the other guests, the Grand High Witch herself, the most powerful and feared of all witches, has summoned her fellow witches to the hotel for an extraordinary meeting. The Grand High Witch, played with electric, unsettling charm by Hathaway, is a creature of terrifying charisma. She moves with an unnatural grace, her accent thick and sharp, her smile a blade hidden in velvet. There is something about her presence that demands attention and obedience. She is as dazzling as she is horrifying, a perfect mask of elegance barely concealing the monster beneath. One afternoon, while exploring the hotel and accompanied by his pet mouse Daisy, the boy accidentally stumbles into the witch's secret meeting, held in the grand ballroom. He hides behind a raised platform, heart hammering in his chest, clutching Daisy close as he peeks through the cracks. What he witnesses is something no child should ever have to see. Once the heavy doors are locked and the curtains drawn, the women shed their human disguises. Wigs are torn off, revealing scaly, bald heads. Shoes are kicked aside, exposing hideous, toeless feet. And the Grand High Witch, standing tall above them all, reveals her true form. A grotesque, nightmarish creature with an impossibly wide, jagged mouth that splits open in a monstrous sneer. Her transformation is horrifying yet mesmerizing. A moment where the boundary between fantasy and nightmare dissolves entirely. The Grand High Witch launches into her grand scheme, her voice booming with manic delight. She has concocted a master plan to exterminate children once and for all. A magic potion that turns anyone who consumes it into a mouse. And she doesn't intend to just hand it out randomly. Her plan is far more insidious. She will distribute the potion in sweets and candies, tempting children to their own dooms without ever suspecting a thing. To demonstrate, she calls forth a plump, unsuspecting boy from the audience. Bruno Jenkins, a hotel guest, greedy and naive, lured in by promises of chocolate. Poor Bruno, played with an endearing obliviousness by Cody Leigh Eastick, becomes the witch's first victim. After consuming a tainted piece of chocolate laced with the Grand High Witch's potion, he undergoes a terrifying, grotesque transformation right there on the ballroom floor, shrinking, squeaking, his body twisting until he is no more than a tiny mouse, scrambling in terror. The witches erupt into fits of cruel laughter, celebrating their success. From his hiding place, the young boy watches in horror, but his horror soon becomes personal. His movement betrays his presence, and before he can escape, the witches descend upon him, dragging him into the center of the ballroom. Despite his desperate struggles, he too is dosed with the potion and undergoes the agonizing transformation into a mouse. It's a moment of breathless tension, a vivid reminder that in this world, even the heroes are not immune to terrible fates. Now tiny and vulnerable, the boy reunites with Bruno, who is equally terrified but still largely preoccupied with his next meal. Together, they scurry through the vast, dangerous expanses of the hotel, narrowly avoiding broom-wielding maids and prowling witches, all while grappling with their new, surreal reality. Their bodies may have changed, but their spirits remain fierce and determined. With the help of Daisy, who, in a twist revealed later, is not just an ordinary mouse but a former child transformed by witches long ago, they make their way back to the grandmother's hotel room. There, amidst gasps of shock and tears of joy, the grandmother embraces her grandson without hesitation, her love undiminished by his new form. Her determination hardens into resolve. Together, they will not only survive, they will fight back. As the grandmother nurses them, she listens carefully to everything her grandson recounts about the witch's plan. Every detail matters. Every scrap of information could be a weapon against their enemy. The grandmother, with her indomitable spirit and fierce intelligence, becomes the leader of their unlikely resistance. Their mission is clear. They must steal a vial of the witch's potion, reverse the witch's own tricks against them, and stop the Grand High Witch before she can unleash her candy-coated apocalypse on children everywhere. The first half of The Witches thrums with escalating suspense and a giddy sense of dread. Every moment, from the grandmother's whispered warnings to the terrifying transformations, sets the stage for a larger battle brewing just beneath the surface. The characters are vibrant and compelling, each carrying their own emotional weight. The boy's quiet resilience, the grandmother's fierce protectiveness, Bruno's clumsy but good-hearted loyalty. Together they form a tiny but mighty force poised against overwhelming evil. Foreshadowing lingers in every shadowed hallway, every too-sweet smile from a stranger, every innocent piece of candy. The tone is playful yet dangerous, whimsical yet laced with genuine menace, a perfect mirror of Roald Dahl's original vision. The audience is left breathless, perched on the edge of their seats, knowing that the true battle is yet to come, but already deeply invested in these small heroes and their impossible mission. And as the boy, now a tiny creature with a heart far too large for his new body, huddles with his grandmother and friends, plotting the impossible, the film leaves viewers with a single, tantalizing question. Can courage, love, and a little bit of cleverness really defeat the darkest magic of all? The plan they hatch, though daring and dangerous, feels like the only path forward. The young boy, once ordinary and cautious, is now brimming with a quiet, fierce determination that makes him larger than life, even in his tiny mouse body. His grandmother, equal parts heart and steel, lays out the steps. They must steal a bottle of the witch's transformative potion, dose the witches themselves, and destroy the Grand High Witch before she can unleash her scheme on the innocent children of the world. Armed with nothing but courage, wit, and a few borrowed hotel supplies, they prepare for their mission. The boy's transformation into a mouse, while terrifying, grants him advantages he never would have possessed before. He can slip through cracks in the walls, scurry unnoticed across crowded rooms, and eavesdrop without detection. Every corner of the vast, glittering hotel becomes part of their battleground. First, they need to retrieve a vial of the potion. They know the Grand High Witch keeps it locked away in her private suite, a towering penthouse that seems more fortress than living quarters. To reach it, the boy and his two fellow mice, Daisy, ever the clever strategist, and Bruno, forever hungry but surprisingly brave when it matters most, must embark on a perilous journey through the labyrinthine hotel. They dodge housekeeping carts, snarl through air vents, and even brave the hotel kitchen, where monstrous cooks chop and fry obliviously above them. The sequence crackles with tension and sly humor. Every clatter of a pot, every swinging shoe threatens to end their mission in a heartbeat. Yet with teamwork, luck, and boundless grit, they ascend toward the Grand High Witch's lair. Inside her suite, the atmosphere is oppressive, dripping with menace. Dark, luxurious furnishings hide countless horrors. Giant trunks overflow with suspicious candies, and strange, arcane devices hum in shadowed corners. In a moment of dizzying triumph, they locate the potion. A delicate bottle, sinister even in its ornate beauty, filled with glowing, green liquid magic distilled into pure malevolence. Gripping the vial with their tiny paws, they begin their return journey. But fate, as always, is not easily conquered. A close call with the Grand High Witch herself, who returns unexpectedly to her room, nearly ends them. Hidden just inches away as she looms above, the trio must summon every ounce of bravery to remain still, even as her predatory gaze sweeps the room. The suspense tightens like a noose, the kind that makes the audience hold their breath without realizing it. Once back with the grandmother, their next step is even bolder. They must find a way to lace the witch's own food with the potion, and the perfect opportunity presents itself at the witch's grand banquet, a lavish affair under the guise of a charitable dinner. It's a feast of decadent dishes, endless desserts, and champagne fountains, designed to distract the wealthy guests while the witches conduct their final preparations. Slipping unnoticed into the kitchen, the boy and Daisy enact their daring sabotage. In a sequence pulsing with danger and mischief, they infiltrate the kitchen staff's preparations, dodging knives and boiling pots to pour the potion into the witch's pea soup. The tension is nearly unbearable as the poisoned dish is ladled into bowls and carried out toward the ballroom. Victory is close, but so is discovery. As the witches gather at their tables, the Grand High Witch presiding over them with a regal sneer, the trap is sprung. One by one, witches begin to convulse, their bodies warping and twisting. Shrinks, squeaks, screams. Pure chaos explodes in the ballroom. The transformation sequences are gloriously grotesque and darkly funny, a perfect Roald Dahl blend of horror and humor. The witches, who moments ago radiated power and menace, are reduced to scrambling, helpless rodents, shrieking and gnashing in panic. The hotel guests, oblivious to the true nature of the women now scurrying across the floor, react with predictable horror. Some faint, others flee, and hotel staff armed with brooms and dustpans descend upon the ballroom, chasing down the rodents with brutal efficiency. The witches, once predators, are now prey, and in an ironic twist, destroyed by the very ordinary people they once so easily outwitted. Yet even as chaos reigns, the real threat remains. The Grand High Witch, immune for the moment, towers above the pandemonium, her monstrous rage unleashed. She corners the boy and his friends, her once charming mask torn away entirely. Her limbs stretch and contort, her monstrous true form emerging fully in a crescendo of horror. Her mouth splits open with a scream that rattles the very walls, her talons striking out like vengeful lightning. The battle between the boy, Daisy, Bruno, and the Grand High Witch becomes a thrilling, heart-pounding confrontation. With speed, cleverness, and unbreakable teamwork, they manage to outwit her again and again, leading her into traps, tricking her with distractions. Finally, in a last desperate gambit, they manage to force a dose of her own potion into her mouth, delivering poetic justice. The transformation that follows is spectacular and terrifying. The Grand High Witch's body twists, shrinks, and collapses into a pitiful, snarling mouse creature. A grotesque parody of her former glory. Her power broken, she becomes just another pest underfoot. And in a final, cathartic moment, the hotel manager, Mr. Stringer, played with comic exasperation by Stanley Tucci, squashes her without a second thought, reducing the mighty witch to nothing more than a splatter on the ballroom floor. The aftermath is bittersweet. The witch's evil has been vanquished, the immediate danger past, but for the boy, Bruno, and Daisy, the consequences of their adventure remain permanent. There is no cure for their mouse forms, no magic spell to reverse what was done. They must live out their lives in these tiny bodies, forever changed. Yet, rather than despair, the boy embraces his new life with remarkable resilience. His grandmother, heart aching but unbroken, promises to care for him with all the love and devotion she has always given. They return home, not defeated, but forged into something stronger by their trials. Back in the comfort of his grandmother's house, a new purpose takes root. The boy, now wise beyond his years and filled with a steely determination, vows to use his experiences to make the world a safer place for children everywhere. The Grand High Witch may be gone, but countless witches remain scattered across the globe, plotting and scheming in the shadows. In a beautiful, heartwarming montage, we see the boy and his grandmother devising clever plans, building tiny gadgets, drawing maps, and preparing for a global crusade against the forces of darkness. Their bond, stronger than ever, becomes the beating heart of the story. Love, family, and courage. These are the true magic that carries them forward. And in one final, poignant scene, the boy addresses a group of wide-eyed children, sharing his story as both a warning and a call to action. His small, mouse body does nothing to diminish the force of his spirit, which burns brightly in every word he speaks. He has turned his curse into a mission, his tragedy into triumph. As the camera pans upward, lifting from the cozy glow of the grandmother's home to the wide, star-filled sky, the message is clear. Even the smallest among us can change the world when armed with courage, cleverness, and an unbreakable heart. At the Heart of the Witches, 2020, beats a story about resilience, love, and the fierce defiance of innocence against overwhelming darkness. And that heart would be nothing without the vivid, unforgettable characters who inhabit its world, each brought to life with a mix of vibrant performances and rich emotional arcs that transform the film from a simple fairy tale into something far more stirring and memorable. The boy, unnamed in this adaptation but portrayed with incredible soulfulness by Jahzir Bruno, is our anchor, the unassuming hero whose quiet strength builds steadily until it shines with blinding clarity. When we first meet him, he is a child wrapped in the warmth of parental love, his days filled with laughter and security. But loss strikes like a thunderclap, robbing him of that safe world in an instant. What makes his journey so compelling is the authenticity of his grief. It's not a sudden leap from sadness to recovery. Instead, his sorrow sits heavy on him, shaping his silences, his hesitations, his wary way of looking at the world. Bruno's performance captures this beautifully. There's a restraint to it, a deep well of emotion held just beneath the surface, bubbling out only in moments of small, heartbreaking vulnerability. This loss and loneliness make him a perfect counter to the witch's malevolence. Where they are cruel and empty, he is full of longing and heart. His transformation into a mouse is, symbolically, the stripping away of everything external. Appearance, stature, voice. What remains is pure spirit, and that spirit refuses to break. In fact, it flourishes. His arc is a journey from quiet survivor to courageous warrior, a subtle but profound evolution. He doesn't roar into heroism, he grows into it, step by small, determined step. It's in the way he protects Bruno despite the danger, the way he comforts Daisy, and the way he resolves, without bitterness, to continue fighting the witches even after his own fate is sealed. In his small form, he becomes larger than life, an embodiment of resilience that lingers long after the final scene. Standing as his protector, mentor, and co-conspirator is his grandmother, a character who burns so brightly that she often feels like the true magical force of the story. Played with warmth, grit, and boundless charm by Octavia Spencer, the grandmother is far from the stereotypical image of frailty and passivity often associated with elderly characters. She is a hurricane in pearls and house dresses, a woman whose love is fierce enough to stand against supernatural evil. Spencer's portrayal captures every dimension of her character. The maternal tenderness that soothes her grieving grandson, the unflinching pragmatism that prepares him for the dangers ahead, and the fierce protectiveness that drives her to wage war against the witches. She believes in what she's seen, carries the scars of encounters past, and refuses to let the next generation fall prey to the monsters she knows all too well. Her relationship with her grandson is the emotional spine of the movie. There's never a moment where his transformation into a mouse causes her love to waver. She treats him exactly as she did before, with patience, humor, and a kind of fierce, everyday bravery that makes her perhaps the truest hero of them all. She doesn't need magic to be powerful. She has experience, love, and an unbreakable spirit, and that's more than enough. Their partnership, built on trust, tenderness, and a shared mission, radiates an authenticity that grounds the movie's more fantastical elements. They are a team not just out of necessity, but out of genuine, enduring love. And it is this bond, more than any potion or spell, that gives them the strength to face the Grand High Witch. The Grand High Witch. No deep dive into the witches would be complete without a plunge into the delicious villainy brought to life by Anne Hathaway. Stepping into a role made iconic decades earlier by Angelica Houston, Hathaway delivers a performance that is at once gloriously theatrical and deeply menacing. Her Grand High Witch is not simply evil. She is the embodiment of gleeful malice, a creature who relishes her cruelty with a charisma that makes it impossible to look away. Hathaway infuses the character with a wicked sense of humor, a bizarre and hypnotic accent, and physicality that veers from graceful to grotesque in the blink of an eye. She glides through the hotel with a predator's poise, her every movement calculated to lure and deceive. But when the mask drops, when her true form is revealed, jagged teeth, clawed hands, and that monstrous grin splitting impossibly wide, it becomes clear that she is a creature of pure nightmare, hiding behind silk gloves and couture dresses. Her motivation is chilling in its simplicity. Hatred, the Grand High Witch despises children with a virulent passion, seeing them as filthy nuisances that must be eradicated. There's no tragic backstory, no attempt to humanize her. She is evil because she chooses to be, and that purity of villainy gives her an almost mythic power. Yet Hathaway plays her with such gleeful commitment that she becomes, paradoxically, wildly entertaining even at her most terrifying. Supporting this trio of central figures are characters who, while smaller in narrative footprint, add critical depth and texture to the story's world. Bruno Jenkins, portrayed with scene-stealing charm by Cody Leigh Eastick, is the kind of boy who might have been a mere comic relief in lesser hands. He's selfish, gluttonous, and blissfully unaware of danger until it's gnashing at his heels. Yet Eastick imbues Bruno with such innocent cluelessness that he becomes genuinely lovable. His friendship with the boy, born not out of grand declarations but shared adversity and survival, adds a lightness that perfectly balances the film's darker moments. And then there's Daisy, revealed to be a former human child, now trapped in the form of a mouse after her own tragic encounter with witches. Daisy's character could have easily been a simple sidekick, but she becomes something far more profound, a symbol of endurance. Soft-spoken yet wise, playful yet deeply scarred, she embodies the cost of evil, but also the ability to find joy and purpose even after great loss. Her friendship with the boy is quiet and steadfast, a silent understanding born from shared pain and mutual hope. On the human side of the hotel's operations, Mr. Stringer, the bumbling manager played by Stanley Tucci, adds a much-needed layer of dry humor and absurdity. Stringer's constant attempts to maintain decorum in the face of mounting chaos are hilarious precisely because of his complete obliviousness to the real danger unfurling under his nose. His frustration, his officiousness, and his ultimate, accidental triumph over the grand high which offer the audience a moment of cathartic laughter amid the horror. The supporting witches, a gaggle of sinister figures hiding in plain sight, serve as a chilling reminder of the film's core terror, that evil often looks ordinary. Their performances, twitchy and unnerving even before they reveal their true forms, create an atmosphere thick with paranoia. Every polite smile, every too-perfect laugh, could be hiding something monstrous. All these characters, major and minor, weave together into a rich tapestry that elevates the story from a simple good versus evil parable into something much deeper. Each character's motivations, whether it's the grandmother's protective love, the boy's yearning for purpose, or the grand high witch's seething hatred, push the narrative forward with an emotional authenticity that resonates far beyond the film's fantastical trappings. And perhaps that is the true magic of The Witches. It presents a world filled with grotesque transformations, malevolent spells, and grand battles between good and evil. But at its core, it remains deeply human. It's about loss and recovery, about fear and courage, about the choice to fight even when the odds seem insurmountable. Through mesmerizing performances and carefully crafted character arcs, The Witches invites viewers not just to witness a fantastical story, but to feel it, to laugh, to shiver, and ultimately, to believe that even the smallest heroes can make the biggest difference. From the very first frame of The Witches, 2020, a keen-eyed viewer will sense that director Robert Zemeckis has crafted a film layered with more than just surface thrills and visual spectacle. Beneath the vibrant colors and chilling transformations lies a dense tapestry of hidden references, subtle callbacks, and symbolic storytelling touches. A secret world that rewards those who dare to look closer. The first whisper of this hidden world comes almost immediately in the movie's opening scenes. The setting, a gorgeously stylized version of late 1960s Alabama, isn't just a backdrop. It's a crucial layer of meaning. Unlike the original novel's European roots, shifting the story to America during the civil rights movement adds unspoken but powerful undercurrents. The young boy, played by Jahzir Bruno, faces not only supernatural threats but also a very real world of prejudice and danger. This subtle recontextualization of the setting gives the movie a deeper emotional resonance without ever feeling didactic. It reminds us that monsters take many forms. Some wear witchy masks, others hide in plain sight in everyday society. Even the boy's hobby, fixing mechanical things, particularly an old record player, acts as quiet foreshadowing. His affinity for tinkering, for seeing how small pieces work together, mirrors the intricate step-by-step way he later dismantles the witch's plans. It's a beautifully understated setup that pays off emotionally when, as a mouse, his cleverness becomes his greatest weapon against evil. Then there's the hotel itself, the Grand Orleans Imperial Island Hotel, which seems to breathe with its own secret life. Watch carefully during the early scenes, and you'll notice tiny details that hint at the presence of witches even before the boy and his grandmother realize the danger. Staff members exhibit strange, twitchy movements. Certain guests linger too long by the children's play areas, casting furtive glances. Even the color palette subtly shifts whenever witches are nearby. Warm, comforting tones grow colder, sharper, almost imperceptibly at first, until the entire environment feels hostile. One of the movie's cleverest Easter eggs lies in the character of Daisy, the pet mouse who is later revealed to be a former child. While this twist is given more narrative prominence in the 2020 adaptation than in previous versions, Clues to Daisy's true identity are sprinkled throughout the first half. Notice how she immediately responds to the boy's voice, far more intelligent and emotionally expressive than any ordinary mouse would be. Her movements, too, often mirror human reactions, moments of hesitation, head tilts that seem almost conversational. It's a slow build, and when the truth comes out, it feels like a revelation hidden in plain sight. The Grand High Witch herself is a goldmine of symbolic and hidden details. And Hathaway's costume design is a masterclass in storytelling through wardrobe. Her gloves, meant to hide her clawed hands, carry an unnerving elegance, a constant reminder of the thin veneer that disguises her monstrous nature. Look closer, and you'll see that her clothing becomes more severe, almost serpentine, as the movie progresses. In the climactic scenes, her sleek, tailored dresses give way to outfits that hint at scales, talons, and unnatural sharpness, visually foreshadowing her final, grotesque transformation. Hathaway's performance also layers in subtle callbacks to classic portrayals of witches across cinema history. Her over-the-top accent, somewhere between Transylvanian and unplaceable fantasy, feels like a sly nod to the grand tradition of theatrical villains. And her exaggerated gestures, particularly the way she arches her fingers and curves her back when she's angry, evoke classic silent film monsters, a hidden tribute to horror's roots. Another rich layer of hidden storytelling unfolds in the film's treatment of the witch's potion, Formula 86. The potion's description, its precise timetable, its grotesque effects, isn't just exposition. It's laced with mythological echoes. The idea of transformation by ingestion recalls ancient fairy tales where eating or drinking something bewitched leads to irreversible change. In fact, even the green glow of the potion seems like a loving homage to classic cinematic potions and elixirs, from the Wizard of Oz's Emerald City to the bubbling brews of old Hammer horror films. The use of numbers throughout the film offers yet another sly nod for attentive viewers. Formula 86 isn't just a random number. It subtly references the slang term 86, meaning to eliminate or get rid of something, exactly what the witches intend for the world's children. It's a small detail, but once noticed, it adds a wicked cleverness to the witch's plan. The witch's meeting itself, staged as a grand charitable gathering for the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, is layered with delicious irony and hidden jokes. The name is a blatant mockery, dripping with dark humor, but it also cleverly mirrors real-world organizations with benevolent-sounding names that sometimes mask more sinister agendas. There's a biting piece of social commentary, tucked just below the surface. Throughout the movie, animals appear repeatedly as silent witnesses to unfolding events. Birds outside windows, cats prowling corridors. These animals, traditionally seen as witches' familiars in folklore, serve a dual purpose. They create an atmosphere of unease and also act as silent heralds, signaling that witchcraft is near. Watch closely during key scenes, and you'll often catch a glimpse of an animal just before something supernatural happens. A subtle cue for sharp-eyed viewers. The transformation sequences themselves are another treasure trove of hidden details. When the witches begin turning into mice, the special effects team layered multiple subtle sound cues into the mix. You can hear tiny whispers, almost like the fading voices of the witches' human selves, mingling with the squeaks and scrabbling. It's a chilling auditory Easter egg that underscores their loss of power and humanity. Even the food plays into the movie's hidden symbolism. The witch's obsession with candy, sweet, tempting, yet ultimately deadly, mirrors classic cautionary tales about too good to be true pleasures. Hansel and Gretel's gingerbread house looms large here, as does the broader fairy tale tradition where the things that look most inviting often conceal the greatest dangers. One of the most poignant hidden threads runs through the boy's relationship with his late parents. Their memory lingers everywhere. In the warm, muted color tones of the flashbacks, in the treasured record player he fixes, and in the lullabies his grandmother hums. It's a constant, invisible presence, a quiet force that shapes his actions even after their loss. In a subtle way, his parents' love continues to shield him, even in their absence, providing the foundation of strength that enables him to face the Grand High Witch. Toward the film's end, when the boy and his grandmother set about planning a global campaign against the witches. Tiny details around their house suggest that their mission has already begun. Maps pinned with colored markers, little mousetrap contraptions designed for offense rather than defense, stacks of mysterious papers. All of it implies that their battle is far larger than the story we've just witnessed. It's an exciting hint that the story doesn't end with the Grand High Witch's defeat. It only evolves. And finally, one of the film's most bittersweet Easter eggs lies in its closing scenes. When the boy speaks to new children, warning them about witches, the animation style used in the background subtly shifts. The lines grow a little more stylized, a little more storybook-like, suggesting that his tale has become legend, a fairy tale passed down from one generation to the next. It's a quiet nod to the enduring power of stories, and the idea that courage, once sparked, never truly dies. All of these hidden details, symbolic flourishes, and Easter eggs don't merely add texture to the witches. They transform it into a layered, living tapestry. Every rewatch reveals new treasures tucked into the folds. A knowing wink from the filmmakers, a silent thread connecting the boy's journey to deeper, older stories, a whispered warning that magic, both good and evil, often lurks just beneath the surface of ordinary life. In the end, The Witches doesn't just invite viewers to be entertained. It invites them to look closer, think deeper, and see the unseen, to become, in their own way, a little more magical themselves. When The Witches, 2020, flickered into life on screens around the world, it brought with it not just a retelling of Roald Dahl's darkly whimsical tale but a creation story as peculiar and spellbinding as the movie itself. Behind the glittering facade of hotel ballrooms and monstrous transformations, the journey to bring this eerie world to life was riddled with strange twists, unexpected challenges, and a few secrets that could almost be mistaken for magic themselves. The journey began years before cameras rolled, with director Robert Zemeckis, a legendary figure known for bending cinematic reality in films like Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, being tapped to reimagine Dahl's beloved but chilling story. Zemeckis didn't simply want to remake the 1990 version starring Angelica Houston. He envisioned something truer to the spirit of Dahl's original novel but layered with his own brand of dazzling visual storytelling. It meant, right from the beginning, pushing technology, performance, and audience expectations to their limits. Casting the Grand High, which was no small task. It required an actress who could straddle the line between charismatic allure and grotesque villainy. And in Hathaway, with her wide expressive features and ability to dive deep into characters, seemed a natural choice. But Hathaway's preparation went far deeper than the surface. To create the bizarre, swirling European accent of the Grand High Witch, she pulled from an unusual list of inspirations. Eastern European dialects, the clipped severity of classic movie villains, and even the intonation patterns of animated characters. Her performance was so heavily stylized that during the early days of filming, crew members reportedly had difficulty keeping straight faces during her scenes. Not because they weren't terrified, but because Hathaway's full commitment to the strange voice and mannerisms created an atmosphere where horror and absurdity danced hand in hand. Transforming Hathaway into the monstrous Grand High, which wasn't just an acting challenge. It was a massive visual effects undertaking. Her exaggerated mouth, which could stretch in impossible directions to reveal razor-sharp teeth, was achieved through a blend of prosthetic work and CGI. Yet, unlike fully animated characters, Hathaway's performance had to remain visible beneath the digital wizardry. Early tests reportedly struggled to strike the right balance. Too little enhancement and she looked merely quirky. Too much and she lost her human relatability. Zemeckis and the visual effects team spent months perfecting the blend, tweaking jaw movements frame by frame to ensure that Hathaway's expressions, her triumphs, her rage, her vanity, still shimmered through the monstrous mask. Then there was the matter of the witch's feet. One of the more controversial behind-the-scenes choices came when the witches were designed to have only 3 fingers on each hand, a direct nod to their inhuman origins. However, after the film's release, members of the disability community criticized the portrayal, noting its uncomfortable resemblance to limb differences in real life. Warner Brothers issued an apology, emphasizing that the design was a fantasy element based on Dahl's descriptions, not meant to stigmatize. The controversy cast a shadow over the release, reminding everyone that even in the most fantastical worlds, representations carry real-world impact. Yet not every behind-the-scenes challenge was steeped in controversy. Some were simply, well, bizarre. Take the filming of the mice scenes. Instead of relying entirely on CGI, the filmmakers used a mix of real, trained mice, animatronic doubles, and digital creations. Getting live mice to perform on cue, however, was predictably chaotic. Reports from the set describe scenes where a perfectly orchestrated shot would fall apart because a mouse decided to explore off-camera or stop to clean itself mid-action. Trainers had to develop complex reward systems involving tiny treats and even calming music to coax the mice into the desired behaviors. Despite the frustrations, Zemeckis insisted on using real animals whenever possible, believing it grounded the fantasy in tangible reality. The hotel set, meanwhile, became its own strange entity. Though many exterior shots were filmed on location, the grand interiors were painstakingly built on soundstages, immense, ornate recreations of luxury hotels from the late 1960s. But because filming occurred during a transitional period right before the COVID-19 pandemic hit full force, the production faced creeping uncertainties. Strict hygiene protocols, social distancing measures, and looming lockdowns created an undercurrent of anxiety beneath the glittering surfaces. In some ways, it added an odd layer of tension to the production, a feeling that the cozy safety of the hotel could crumble at any moment, echoing the story's themes of hidden dangers. Perhaps one of the most charming behind-the-scenes stories centers on Octavia Spencer, who played the boys' warm and courageous grandmother. Known for her quick wit and sense of humor, Spencer reportedly became the heart of the set. Whenever filming stretched long into the night or scenes involving complex mouse choreography bogged down the schedule, Spencer kept spirits high with impromptu storytelling sessions. Crew members recall how she would gather younger actors and extras during downtime, telling ghost stories and funny anecdotes, keeping morale alive in an atmosphere that could otherwise have felt stifling. Jahzir Bruno, the young actor portraying the unnamed hero boy, faced his own unique challenges. Acting opposite non-existent mice and witches who would later be enhanced digitally meant he had to react to thin air more often than not. To help him, the effects team used simple placeholders, tiny puppets, green foam balls, and even animators dressed in full-body suits to mimic the movement of digital creatures. Bruno's natural charm and adaptability shone through, and his grounded performance helped anchor the fantastical visuals with real human emotion. Interestingly, the decision to change the setting from Europe to Alabama in the late 1960s wasn't just about aesthetics. Zemeckis wanted to reframe the story in a way that subtly acknowledged the social realities of the time. In an early version of the script, there were more overt references to segregation and racial prejudice, but most of these were eventually trimmed to keep the story focused on its fantastical elements. Still, the choice of setting lingers as an invisible backdrop, giving the boys' struggle greater historical weight without needing to spell everything out. And while the movie leaned heavily on cutting-edge digital effects, there was one special effect that remained charmingly old school: the witches' transformation scenes. To create the illusion of witches shrinking and mutating, classic techniques like forced perspective and puppetry were layered alongside CGI. Zemeckis, a lifelong fan of practical effects, insisted that real-world elements stay in the mix whenever possible to keep the audience subconsciously anchored in a believable world. Of course, no exploration of the witches, 2020, would be complete without mentioning Guillermo del Toro's involvement. Originally, Del Toro was slated to direct the film himself, envisioning a darker, more horror-leaning adaptation that harkened back to Dahl's most nightmarish imagery. Though scheduling conflicts ultimately led him to step aside, he remained attached as a producer, and his fingerprints are still visible, especially in the movie's lovingly grotesque creature designs and the slightly sinister, dreamlike atmosphere that seeps into every frame. One of the final curious footnotes in the film's strange journey came in its distribution. Originally planned for a wide theatrical release, the COVID-19 pandemic forced Warner Bros. To shift strategies. In many territories, The Witches bypassed cinemas entirely, landing straight onto HBO Max. This unprecedented move led to both excitement and controversy. Some fans delighted at the chance to experience the film safely at home, while others mourned the loss of what could have been a sumptuous big-screen experience. In a strange way, though, it was fitting. Much like the witches in the story, the film itself had to adapt to an unpredictable world, changing shape to survive. Yet perhaps the most enduring behind-the-scenes story isn't about special effects or studio politics at all. It's about the emotional bond formed between cast members during production. And Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, Jahzir, Bruno, all of them spoke in interviews about the powerful camaraderie that grew between them, particularly during the long, often isolating shoot. In a world turning increasingly uncertain outside the soundstage walls, the warmth and connection they built became not just a happy accident, but the secret heart of the film itself. As the credits roll on The Witches, 2020, it's easy to be swept away by the glamour, the horror, the gleeful wickedness. But tucked behind the scenes, the film's true magic lies in the odd, sometimes chaotic, always fascinating dance of creativity and challenge that brought it to life. Every digitally rendered claw, every twitch of a mouse's nose, every whispered piece of set gossip, they all weave together into a tapestry as rich and strange as any fairy tale Roald Dahl himself might have imagined. And like the best tales, its true wonder reveals itself only to those who know where and how to look. As The Witches, 2020, unfolds its eerie charm, certain moments rise from the swirling shadows, imprinting themselves indelibly in the minds of viewers. These aren't merely scenes stitched together by plot. They are emotional fulcrums, thematic anchors, and powerful bursts of artistry that define the very essence of the film. They linger long after the credits roll, not because they are loud or flashy, but because they resonate with deeper fears, hopes, and the fantastical vulnerability that has always been at the heart of Roald Dahl's storytelling. The first moment that truly sets the film's strange, beguiling tone is the boy's tragic backstory, the sudden loss of his parents in a car crash. Although presented with the softness characteristic of a children's story, the sequence carries an emotional rawness that immediately raises the stakes. There's a delicate poignancy in the way the young boy clutches onto his pet mouse, Daisy, finding solace in the tiny creature when his world collapses. It's a moment that subtly plants one of the film's key themes: the search for family, protection, and love in a world that can be capriciously cruel. The audience is pulled into sympathy not just through the sorrow, but through the boy's resilience, creating an early, powerful bond between protagonist and viewer. Octavia Spencer's portrayal of Grandma brings warmth to this cold moment, and her first major scene, comforting her grieving grandson with stories of witches, sparkles with both tenderness and tension. Her lilting tone, half cautionary, half loving, turns what could have been mere exposition into a mesmerizing fireside tale. Spencer's performance here injects a layer of authenticity that is rare in fantasy films. We believe every word she says, not because the script insists, but because of the lived-in humanity she exudes. In audience reactions, this early scene was often cited as a standout. Viewers found it both soothing and chilling, a perfect echo of Dahl's ability to scare and comfort in the same breath. Another key moment that crystallizes the movie's identity arrives when the boy first encounters a witch at the grocery store. It's a masterclass in slow-building dread. And Hathaway's grand high, which isn't revealed yet, but the sense of lurking malevolence is palpable. The way the strange woman lures the boy with candy, the subtle wrongness of her appearance, the slightly too wide smile, the claw-like hands hidden in gloves, create a sense of real danger. This sequence taps into primal childhood fears, the knowledge that something isn't right, the instinct to run even before understanding why. The film's camera work, tight shots, oppressive framing, enhances the unease, and viewers feel a knot of anxiety tightening, realizing that the boy's safe, comforting world is already being infiltrated by horrors unseen. And then, there's the grand reveal. The witches gathering at the hotel, where the grand high witch removes her mask in front of her coven. This scene is arguably the film's crown jewel, a swirling combination of grotesque imagery, dark humor, and brilliant performance. And Hathaway commands the screen with a theatricality that is both magnetic and monstrous. When she peels away her glamour to reveal her true, hideous form, sharp teeth, grotesque smile, reptilian features, the transformation is a grotesque spectacle that feels gleefully transgressive. Audience reactions to this scene were fascinating. Some found it deliciously creepy, embracing the high camp horror, while others recoiled, uncomfortable with the distorted body horror. Regardless, no one remained indifferent. It's a moment that defines the movie's tonal tightrope, both playful and deeply unsettling. From a thematic perspective, the witch's hatred of children isn't simply villainy for villainy sake. It becomes a dark allegory for societal cruelty, the way those in power often seek to eliminate the vulnerable, the innocent, and the different. The witch's plan to turn children into mice, rendering them powerless and unseen, carries echoes of real-world fears about marginalization and erasure. The scene where the Grand High Witch unveils her plan to distribute cursed sweets is layered with a chilling subtext about the perils of trust and innocence corrupted. Another critical moment, quieter but no less impactful, is when the boy, now transformed into a mouse, first confronts his new reality. It's here that the movie takes an emotional risk. Instead of focusing purely on fear, the film lets the boy embrace his transformation with a surprising degree of acceptance. "I'm still me," he insists, squeaking but determined, his grandmother's love unwavering. This small, tender scene ripples outward, offering one of the movie's most powerful messages. Identity is not tied to physical form. It's a deeply resonant idea, especially for younger viewers who might struggle with feelings of otherness or change. Audience responses to this moment were often emotional. Many found themselves unexpectedly moved, touched by the quiet bravery of a boy who refuses to be defined by what he has lost. The heist sequence, where the boy, Daisy, and Bruno, also a mouse, work together to sabotage the witches, injects a burst of adrenaline into the narrative. Here, Robert Zemeckis' flair for visual ingenuity shines. Watching tiny mice zip across enormous tables, dodge towering adults, and manipulate objects with impossible precision taps into a joyful sense of mischief. But beneath the fun, there's a potent undercurrent. These children, stripped of their human forms, have nonetheless seized agency. They refuse to be victims, staging a miniature rebellion against forces far larger and more powerful than themselves. It's a kinetic encapsulation of the story's deeper themes: resilience, courage, and the power of unity. One cannot overlook the climactic confrontation between Grandma and the Grand High Witch, a showdown charged with years of history, bitterness, and defiance. Spencer and Hathaway, playing characters from entirely different worlds, create a sizzling dynamic. In one of the film's most thrilling beats, Grandma doesn't just outwit the Grand High Witch, she exposes her hubris. The witches, so convinced of their superiority, are undone by the very children and lesser beings they sought to oppress. It's a moment of poetic justice that feels both satisfying and inevitable, a payoff that rewards the audience's emotional investment. Emotionally, the film's ending strikes a bittersweet chord. Unlike many mainstream children's films, The Witches does not undo the boy's transformation. He remains a mouse, living out his days happily with his loving grandmother. This choice, both faithful to Dahl's original and emotionally daring, polarized audiences. Some applauded the honesty of it, seeing it as a bold affirmation that life's hardships don't always come with magical reversals. Others yearned for a more traditionally uplifting resolution. Either way, it provokes thought, and that lingering complexity elevates the film beyond mere entertainment. In analyzing these key moments collectively, a pattern emerges. The Witches, 2020, is a film built on contrasts. Comfort and terror, loss and love, grotesquerie and beauty weave together seamlessly. It mirrors the complicated emotional landscapes of childhood itself, where safety can evaporate in an instant, where magic and menace often walk hand in hand. The film's visual style reinforces these contrasts. The plush, candy-colored interiors of the hotel mask the sinister machinations lurking within. The Grand High Witch's glamour barely conceals her monstrous form. Even Grandma's soothing tales have jagged edges. These aesthetic choices deepen the film's impact, subtly conditioning the audience to expect deception, to look beneath surfaces, a lesson that aligns perfectly with the story's core message. Critically, while The Witches, 2020, received mixed reviews, Many acknowledged the strength of these pivotal scenes. Even skeptics noted Hathaway's bravura performance and the boldness of retaining the original's darker thematic spine. Others praised the film for respecting its young audience's intelligence, refusing to sand down every sharp edge for the sake of palatability. For viewers attuned to its rhythms, the film offered a layered experience, one that blended old-school horror, heartfelt emotion, and sly humor into something truly unique. Perhaps the most telling testament to the power of these key moments is how they linger, surfacing in online discussions, fan theories, and critical essays. Viewers return again and again to the image of a small mouse staring down a monstrous witch, to the whispered warnings of a grandmother's love, to the twisted smile of a villain too sure of her invincibility. These are not simply cinematic beats. They are emotional imprints, scars and stars left behind on the imagination. And in the end, that is the true magic of The Witches, 2020. Through its most impactful scenes, it captures not just a story of fantastical creatures and daring adventures, but the deeper, timeless struggle to find hope, courage, and love in a world that often feels full of shadows. It dares its audience, young and old alike, to see beyond appearances, to embrace the strange and wonderful, and to believe, always, in the power of the small to change the course of the great. Behind the mesmerizing world of The Witches, 2020, lies a tapestry of creative risks, technical wizardry, and passionate craftsmanship that brought Roald Dahl's classic to vivid, unsettling life. It's a journey that wasn't just about adapting a beloved story. It was about pushing the boundaries of modern filmmaking, honoring the spirit of the original, and creating a visual and emotional experience that felt both timeless and daringly fresh. When director Robert Zemeckis first signed onto the project, expectations soared. Known for his groundbreaking work blending live-action and visual effects in films like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and The Polar Express, Zemeckis was uniquely equipped to tackle a story where magic, transformation, and fantasy had to feel tactile and real. From the beginning, he envisioned The Witches not merely as a retelling, but as a reimagining, an experience that would envelop audiences in a richly textured world where the grotesque and the whimsical lived side by side. One of the first major creative decisions was to shift the story's setting from 1980s England to 1960s Alabama, a choice that subtly altered the movie's entire visual and emotional palette. The vibrant, candy-colored aesthetic of the American South infused the film with a lush, nostalgic glow, even as it masked the lurking darkness underneath. Production designer Gary Freeman painstakingly recreated the opulence of a luxury Southern hotel, layering the sets with period-accurate details, from the ornate carpets to the polished brass fixtures, that created a visually sumptuous yet slightly suffocating backdrop for the witches' sinister plans. But crafting such an immersive world came with significant hurdles. Filming much of the story within the confines of a hotel meant designing spaces that could accommodate both practical effects and complex visual trickery. Massive hotel ballrooms had to be reconfigured to allow for the physical transformations of characters, particularly the boy's harrowing change into a mouse, and to support the extensive wire work, puppetry, and CGI that would later bring those transformations to life. Central to the movie's success was the portrayal of the witches themselves, especially Anne Hathaway's Grand High Witch. Zemeckis and his team knew that simply relying on makeup or costumes wouldn't capture the surreal menace of the witches described by Dahl. Instead, Hathaway underwent hours of prosthetic work combined with sophisticated digital enhancements. Her character's exaggerated mouth, capable of stretching impossibly wide into a horrifying rictus grin, was achieved through a seamless blend of practical makeup and cutting-edge CGI. Visual effects supervisor Kevin Bailey led a team that digitally augmented Hathaway's face, ensuring that her expressions remained grounded in her performance while amplifying the supernatural grotesquerie to unsettling effect. The technical challenges didn't stop there. Perhaps the most ambitious visual undertaking was the transformation of children into mice. Unlike the 1990 version of The Witches, which used animatronic puppets for the mouse characters, Zemeckis opted for a hybrid approach. Highly detailed CGI mice rendered with lifelike textures and movements, yet infused with the personalities and emotions of the human characters they once were. Every twitch of a whisker, every dart of an eye, had to communicate fear, determination, and humor, No small feat for digital characters operating in a live-action world. To achieve this, the production team conducted exhaustive motion studies of Roald mice, capturing how their bodies moved, how their tiny paws gripped surfaces, how their noses twitched in response to stimuli. Animators then layered human-like expressiveness into these natural movements, a delicate balancing act that avoided descending into cartoonishness. The result was a kind of living magic. Mouse characters who felt both completely real and deeply relatable, able to carry complex emotional beats without ever speaking a word outside of internal narration. One of the most iconic technical achievements came during the Witch's Grand Convention scene, where Hathaway's Grand High Witch unveils her true form. Bringing this scene to life required a monumental effort involving synchronized choreography, practical effects, digital augmentation, and intricate costume work. Special attention was paid to the Grand High Witch's movements. Her elongated arms, razor-sharp claws, and hovering, predatory gait. Hathaway performed much of the movement work herself, aided by a custom-designed costume rig that allowed her to physically mimic the creature's unnatural posture, which was then subtly enhanced in post-production through digital limb extensions and skeletal distortion effects. Behind the scenes, this level of technical complexity demanded perfect coordination. During filming, entire teams operated motion capture rigs, practical prosthetics, and green screen environments simultaneously. Every frame of Hathaway's transformation had to be meticulously choreographed to maintain continuity between her real-world performance and the fantastical alterations layered on top of it. Even the smallest inconsistency, an arm bent at the wrong angle, a mouth moving too slowly, could break the illusion, so the film's editors and VFX artists spent countless hours perfecting each detail frame by frame. But it wasn't just the big, flashy effects that defined The Witch's production achievements. Small, subtle innovations wove themselves into every corner of the film. The cursed candies, central to The Witch's plan to transform children, were specially designed to glisten and gleam on camera, employing a mix of practical prop creation and CGI enhancement to make them irresistibly inviting yet faintly unnatural. The film's lighting, overseen by cinematographer Don Burgess, employed a rich, high-contrast style that emphasized the fairy tale qualities of the setting while casting deep, lurking shadows that hinted at darker forces. Every shaft of sunlight, every glimmer on a polished surface was calibrated to maintain the delicate tonal balance between whimsy and horror. Of course, no production of this scale is without its trials. One of the most significant hurdles the crew faced was the need to adjust their shooting schedule mid-filming due to weather complications and location challenges. Originally planning for a combination of studio and on-location shoots, the team had to rapidly pivot to constructing more elaborate sets when certain outdoor scenes became impossible to film on-site. This unexpected shift placed enormous pressure on the art department, who rose to the challenge with stunning ingenuity, crafting massive indoor replicas of gardens, streets, and beachside landscapes that were virtually indistinguishable from the real thing on screen. Another behind-the-scenes wrinkle came in the form of the film's heavy reliance on child actors and animal characters, both notoriously difficult elements in production. Zemeckis, however, approached these challenges with patience and creativity. He scheduled shorter shooting days for scenes involving children to maintain their energy and focus, while employing animal trainers and puppeteers to ensure that scenes with live animals, used in conjunction with CGI, went smoothly and safely. The production's commitment to humane and ethical treatment of its animal actors was evident, with several scenes relying on entirely digital stand-ins to avoid overworking the real creatures. One charming production anecdote involves Anne Hathaway herself, who became so invested in embodying the Grand High Witch's unique voice, a curious, otherworldly accent blending Norwegian lilt with sharp, guttural undertones, that she stayed in character between takes, delighting and occasionally unnerving her fellow cast members. Hathaway reportedly worked with dialect coaches for weeks before filming even began, aiming to craft a vocal performance that was both larger than life and strangely believable. Her commitment paid off, adding an unforgettable layer of theatricality to the character that critics and audiences alike cited as one of the film's standout elements. Composer Alan Silvestri, longtime collaborator with Zemeckis, also brought a critical piece of the film's atmosphere to life through his score. Silvestri's music oscillates between whimsical melodies and ominous undertones, cleverly echoing the dual nature of the story. Strings quiver with tension during moments of dread. Playful flutes dance during scenes of childlike mischief. His compositions subtly guide the audience's emotional journey, often cueing us to danger or relief even before the visuals fully reveal it. Recording the score proved another technical challenge, as the COVID-19 pandemic hit during post-production, requiring remote sessions and careful coordination to piece together the final soundtrack from multiple, isolated recording locations. Speaking of the pandemic, The Witches also faced the daunting task of completing its final edits, effects work, and marketing during a time of global uncertainty. Originally intended for a major theatrical release, the film ultimately pivoted to a streaming premiere on HBO Max, a decision that reflected both the practical realities of the moment and the industry's rapidly evolving landscape. This unexpected shift demanded last-minute adjustments to the film's final mastering process to optimize it for home viewing, ensuring that its intricate details, rich color grading, and delicate sound design translated beautifully across a wide range of screen sizes and speaker systems. In a way, this pivot only underscored the resilience and ingenuity that had defined The Witches from its inception. It's a film that embodies the spirit of creative problem-solving, where technical brilliance serves a deeper artistic vision, a vision that celebrates the strange, the magical, and the terrifying with equal reverence. And perhaps that is the film's greatest technical triumph. Not the dazzling CGI alone, nor the seamless blending of practical and digital effects, but the way every element, every set, every costume, every note of music, works in harmony to transport viewers into a world where wonder and fear walk hand in hand. A world that feels, in every shimmering frame, as if it could exist just beyond the edge of our own. Beneath its whimsical surface and fantastical storytelling, The Witches, 2020 carries within it a rich tapestry of themes, symbolism, and social reflections that elevate it far beyond a simple children's horror story. The film spins its narrative with a vibrant, unsettling energy, yet tucked into every frame and every carefully chosen line of dialogue are deeper resonances. Echoes of real-world struggles, hidden fears, and enduring human truths that lend the story its surprising emotional weight. At its heart, The Witches is a story about resilience in the face of monstrous cruelty. The witches themselves, with their beautiful disguises hiding rotting souls, symbolize the ever-present danger of evil that masquerades as charm. In a world where threats often lurk behind smiling faces and polished appearances, the film subtly reminds viewers, especially the young, that discernment and courage are essential survival tools. This central idea finds its purest expression in the young hero boy, whose tragic loss at the beginning of the film doesn't crush his spirit, but rather sharpens it, preparing him to recognize and confront the hidden dangers he soon faces. His journey is a mirror to the experience of growing up, of learning that the world can be a cruel place, but also that bravery, kindness, and cleverness can carve a path through even the darkest moments. The boy's transformation into a mouse, far from a simple horror gag, becomes a potent metaphor for vulnerability and adaptation. Though shrunk and seemingly powerless, he discovers a new kind of strength, one not dependent on physical might, but on quick thinking, teamwork, and an unbreakable will. It's a celebration of the small and underestimated, a powerful, if quietly delivered, statement about inner worth transcending outward appearances. The symbolism laced through The Witches' portrayal deepens this emotional undercurrent. Their grotesque features, hidden claws, bald heads concealed under wigs, sinister smiles, speak not only to literal deception but to societal pressures of conformity and the dangerous suppression of true identity. In a broader cultural sense, The Witches reflect systems of oppression that prey upon the vulnerable, targeting those seen as powerless or different. Their disdain for children, who in the film's world represent innocence, imagination, and potential, resonates with real-world systems that marginalize and exploit the powerless for gain. By setting the story in 1960s Alabama, the film roots its narrative in a specific historical context rich with its own societal tensions and injustices. Without ever stating it overtly, the backdrop evokes the civil rights era, a time when systemic racism, segregation, and institutionalized cruelty shaped daily life for African Americans in the South. casting a young black boy as the protagonist in this environment, guided and protected by a strong, loving grandmother played by Octavia Spencer, imbues the story with a quiet but powerful commentary on resistance and survival. In this light, the witch's disdain and predation take on an even sharper edge, reflecting a world where injustice often wears a veneer of respectability. Grandmother Agatha's character becomes a beacon of ancestral wisdom, resilience, and cultural strength. Her stories about witches are not mere fairy tales but cautionary legacies passed down to shield future generations. She embodies the power of knowledge and tradition as tools for survival, highlighting the critical importance of intergenerational bonds and storytelling within marginalized communities. Her gentle yet firm guidance anchors Hero Boy's journey, providing him with the foundation he needs to confront and outwit forces far greater than himself. Within this thematic framework, food emerges as an especially rich symbol throughout the movie. The witch's plan to poison children using cursed candies draws a stark contrast between the sweetness of outward appearances and the hidden dangers beneath. The candies, bright, enticing, and seemingly harmless, become emblems of how temptation can cloak destruction. They invite viewers to question the things that seem too good to be true, and to stay vigilant against the lure of easy pleasures that may carry hidden costs. Transformation as a theme also pulses through every scene. Whether it's physical, emotional, or moral, transformation serves as both a curse and a blessing. The witches force unwanted transformations onto innocent children, stripping them of their agency and reducing them to powerless forms. Yet the children's subsequent resourcefulness and adaptation in their new mouse bodies reveal that transformation can also be an avenue to unexpected strengths. This duality captures an essential truth about life itself. Change is inevitable, often painful, but not necessarily a defeat. It's the response to change that defines a person's character. Even the Grand High Witch's ultimate defeat carries symbolic weight. Her grotesque downfall underscores the idea that evil, no matter how powerful or cleverly disguised, ultimately devours itself through hubris and cruelty. It's a narrative rooted deeply in folklore traditions, where monsters are undone not by brute force, but by their own arrogance and the unyielding spirit of those they sought to dominate. Layered within the film's visual design are countless symbolic flourishes that deepen these themes. The witch's hands, hidden beneath gloves, symbolize the sinister actions concealed by polite society. Their wigs, carefully affixed to hide their baldness, suggest the desperate lengths to which oppressive forces will go to maintain a facade of normalcy. The constant motif of mirrors, used in hotel lobbies, in the witch's meeting room, in the Grand High Witch's quarters, serves as a reminder of duality and deception, of the tension between appearance and reality. The film also weaves in ideas of community and solidarity. Hero Boy, once isolated by grief, finds new companions in Bruno and Daisy, who share his plight and join forces against their common enemy. Their alliance, born of shared vulnerability, becomes their greatest strength, a quiet nod to the idea that collective action, friendship, and empathy are essential to overcoming injustice. On a broader cultural level, The Witches taps into a timeless fear, the vulnerability of children in a world controlled by malevolent forces beyond their understanding. It's a fear that resonates across generations, speaking to both literal threats and the more abstract anxieties of growing up, of losing innocence, and of realizing that the world isn't always fair. Yet the film refuses to wallow in despair. Instead, it offers a message of empowerment, encouraging viewers to confront darkness not with overwhelming force, but with courage, cleverness, and an unbreakable sense of self. The ending of the film, too, deviates from typical children's fare, offering a bittersweet but hopeful resolution. Hero Boy remains a mouse, a permanent transformation that many stories would frame as a tragedy. Yet in The Witches, it becomes a new beginning, a chance for adventure, purpose, and an unbroken spirit. This refusal to restore the normal status quo is a bold thematic statement, that life's changes, even the painful ones, are not to be feared or mourned, but embraced and navigated with heart and resilience. In this way, The Witches stands apart from many adaptations and reimaginings of classic tales. It honors the darkness at the story's core without surrendering to nihilism. It acknowledges that evil exists, that injustice persists, and that losses can be permanent. But it also insists that goodness, ingenuity, and love endure, and that even in a world rife with monsters, there is room for hope, laughter, and new adventures. The film's nuanced social commentary, layered themes of resilience and transformation, and richly symbolic imagery work together to create an experience that lingers long after the credits roll. It invites audiences to look deeper, to question appearances, to trust their inner strength, and to remember that, even when the world feels overwhelmingly dark, there is always light to be found in courage, kindness, and connection. And so, The Witches, 2020, becomes more than a retelling of a classic children's story. It becomes a parable for all ages, a vibrant, unsettling, ultimately hopeful reminder that while evil may sometimes wear a smiling face, it is the brave, the clever, and the compassionate who will always, in the end, carry the day. From the moment The Witches, 2020, begins, it's clear that Robert Zemeckis, a master of blending whimsy with unease, had a specific vision in mind, one that uses every cinematic tool available to pull the audience into a world where magic simmers just beneath the surface of everyday life. The film's visual storytelling immediately signals that while this may be a fantastical story for younger audiences, it's rooted in a sophisticated cinematic language designed to enchant, unsettle, and ultimately captivate viewers of all ages. The cinematography, handled with precision by Don Burgess, serves as the film's first spell. The camera movements are often deliberate, gliding smoothly through spaces in a way that gives the viewer a sense of creeping discovery. Wide shots of the opulent Grand Orleans Imperial Island Hotel juxtapose the grandeur of its exteriors with the sinister events unfolding inside. Burgess crafts compositions that frequently place the small, vulnerable characters against towering, opulent backdrops, reinforcing the theme of innocence threatened by overwhelming forces. It's not just about scale. It's about the emotional experience of facing a world too large, too imposing, yet finding a place within it nonetheless. Color plays a crucial role in the visual storytelling. Zemeckis and his team embrace a palette that shifts subtly as the story progresses. Early scenes glow with warm, nostalgic tones, the yellows, creams, and soft pastels of a 1960s memory, evoking the comforting safety of the grandmother's home and the sleepy southern town. But as Hero Boy and his grandmother arrive at the hotel, the palette cools and sharpens. Rich, saturated reds and ominous shadows creep into the frame, signaling danger and transformation. The witch's secret meeting room is bathed in deep purples and murky greens, colors traditionally associated with witchcraft and corruption, setting a mood of suffocating dread without needing a single line of dialogue to spell it out. Editing, guided by Jeremiah O'Driscoll's keen sense of pacing, further enhances the film's eerie momentum. The cuts are never jarring but instead flow with a dreamlike rhythm, often lingering just a beat longer than comfortable during tense moments. When Hero Boy hides under the stage during the witch's gathering, the editing cleverly toggles between his terrified perspective and the witch's increasingly grotesque transformations, building suspense without losing coherence. The sense of claustrophobia is palpable, not through frantic cuts but through the tightening of the visual frame and the oppressive sound design that breathes heavier as the scene escalates. Speaking of sound, The Witches uses auditory elements with remarkable precision. Alan Silvestri's score, both playful and ominous, acts as an emotional barometer throughout the film. Silvestri, a longtime collaborator with Zemeckis, understands when to allow a gentle musical whimsy to drift into a melody, suggesting childlike wonder, and when to pull the sound into darker, more discordant territory to hint at the terror lurking nearby. During the witch's unveiling scene, the music shifts from a lilting, mischievous theme into something more nightmarish, with sharp stings and eerie choral undercurrents, amplifying the horror without ever overwhelming the scene. The score threads through the entire narrative like a hidden pulse, heightening tension and release at just the right moments. Beyond the score, the film's sound design itself weaves an intricate layer of storytelling. The subtle scratching of the witch's hidden claws against their gloves, the faint rustle of mouse feet skittering across hotel floors, the sickly sweet hiss of the witches' voices when they drop their charming facades. All these details coalesce into an immersive oral experience. It's a soundscape designed not to dominate but to seep in, to make the hairs on the back of the neck stand up without viewers fully realizing why. Zemeckis also employs a range of visual effects, blending practical makeup artistry with CGI to create the witches' monstrous forms. While some critics noted a reliance on digital effects, the intentional stylistic exaggeration, a grotesquely wide mouth, clawed hands, serpentine limbs, serves the fairy tale tone of the story. These witches aren't designed to mimic realistic creatures. They are exaggerated nightmares sprung from a child's imagination. The CGI, while sometimes uncanny, taps into the storybook quality that permeates every frame, helping audiences embrace the surreal horror without pushing it into grotesque realism that would have alienated younger viewers. One of the most striking stylistic choices is the depiction of the Grand High Witch, played with ferocious glee by Hathaway. Zemeckis and his team lean into theatricality with her design and performance, enhancing it through camera work that emphasizes her looming, predatory energy. Low-angle shots make her seem gigantic and imposing, her presence swallowing up the frame. When she reveals her true form, her movements become both elegant and horrifying, thanks to a combination of Hathaway's physical performance and digital enhancements that elongate her limbs and sharpen her features into something grotesquely mesmerizing. The hotel setting itself becomes almost a character through production design. It's a place of polished surfaces, hidden passageways, and overstuffed luxury, yet every detail, the gleaming chandeliers, the labyrinthine hallways, the overbearing floral arrangements, suggests a false front, much like the witch's own disguises. The sets are designed to evoke both awe and unease, pulling viewers deeper into the story's moral about the dangers of appearances. Lighting also plays a crucial narrative role. Early scenes bask in a soft, diffuse glow that seems almost protective. Yet once the witch's plot begins to unfurl, harsher, more directional lighting creeps in. Shadows lengthen, corners darken, and even the hotel's grandeur takes on a sinister edge. In the climactic scenes, the ballroom, once bright and golden, is plunged into murky gloom, the light fractured by frantic motion and chaos, reflecting the collapse of the witch's carefully maintained illusion of control. Another standout visual storytelling device is the use of perspective shifts once Hero Boy transforms into a mouse. The camera often drops to his new eye level, allowing audiences to experience the world through his altered, vulnerable point of view. Everyday objects become towering obstacles. Human figures loom like giants. Safe spaces shrink into traps. This shift is not just a gimmick but a vital narrative tool, reinforcing the emotional journey of adapting to a new, perilous reality. Zemeckis' touch is evident in the way the film handles movement through space. Tracking shots follow Hero Boy's frantic scurrying through vents and under tables with kinetic energy that mirrors his desperate fear, while sweeping crane shots give moments of triumph, a sense of epic accomplishment despite the character's tiny forms. It's a careful dance between intimacy and spectacle, always ensuring that even the smallest victories feel grand and hard-won. One cannot overlook the film's use of costume design to visually distinguish the witches from the humans around them. Even before they reveal their true natures, the witches are slightly off, overdressed, their fashions gaudy or subtly dated, their smiles too sharp, their movements too measured. Costume designer Joanna Johnston crafts wardrobes that signal danger to attentive viewers without ever breaking the narrative illusion. The Grand High Witch's costumes, in particular, evolve from sleek, sophisticated couture to increasingly bizarre and sinister designs as her true nature slips through her carefully maintained mask. Meanwhile, the sound editing layers and background elements, snatches of dialogue, the clinking of fine china, the distant rumble of the sea, to create a textured, living world. These ambient sounds aren't mere filler. They ground the fantasy in a reality rich enough to make the intrusion of magic feel both shocking and inevitable. Perhaps the most distinctive aspect of Zemeckis' visual storytelling.